So good morning. Today's daf is daf mem daled. We are literally at the top of daf mem daled amud aleph, but we're really in the middle of something. So let's back up and we'll understand. Yesterday we ended with a brisa. The brisa has two parts. Part one says if someone sells a house or a field, the seller may not testify on behalf of the buyer because of the guarantee that the seller gave the buyer. Right, so that's what it says. And similarly, on the other hand, if someone sells a cow or a talus, the seller may testify on behalf of the buyer because there is no guarantee provided by the seller. So Rav Sheshes offered a very complicated explanation of this brisa. It was not simply talking about a buyer and a seller, but there were actually four parties involved. There was Shimon, who was the original owner, and he had it stolen from him by Ruvain, and Ruvain then sold it to Levi, and then Yehuda came and challenged Levi's title. So the question was, can Shimon testify on Levi's behalf? And so this brisa was understood to mean that when the item that was stolen from Shimon was a house or a field, so then he's not going to be able to testify because, as we saw yesterday, that the property will remain available for Shimon's creditors. On the other hand, when it's a cow or a talus, so then the property is not available for Shimon's creditors, and so as a result, it would he would be allowed to testify on behalf of Levi. Now, why would he want to testify on behalf of Levi? Well, that was part of what we discussed yesterday as well. He would want to testify on behalf of Levi because he felt that it was easier to get his stuff back from Levi. Now, what about the problem that if he testified on behalf of Levi, he would be effectively testifying against himself and he would never be able to collect it? So his testimony on behalf of Levi was not actually for Levi, it was against Yehuda, who was trying to take it away from him. So that was our explanation yesterday. Now we begin with a question. The Lokma Begazlan. Why bother with Levi at all? Why not just have that the conversation, that Rav Sheshes' explanation involves the thief directly, meaning that in the case of the house or the field, so what we're talking about is where Yehuda makes a claim against Reuven, the thief. And so now Shimon, who was the original owner, wants to testify on behalf of Reuven, the thief, because, that way, presumably it'll be easier to collect from the thief himself than from Yehuda. And so as a result, you will say that in the case of the house or the field, so then because the property remains with a lien on it, that would be better as long as it was originally owned by Shimon. The property will actually have a lien on it for Shimon's creditors. But if in fact Yehuda were to take it away, well, that would mean that Shimon never owned it, and there would not be that benefit of the creditor. So as a result, when it comes to the house or the field, Shimon would not be able to testify. But when it comes to the cow or the talus, so then he would be able to testify. Why not explain it that way? So mishum dekaboy lemisna seifa. So the Gemara explains that I've missed the fact that if in fact we look at the second case, makarlo para, makarlo talus, that if in the case of selling the cow or the talus, well, then actually what I was saying doesn't work. That in fact, if I were to that I should not in fact be able to testify, right? So the Brisa said that if based on Rav Shesh's explanation, that if Ruvain the thief were holding the talus or the cow, I should be able to testify. But in truth, I would not be able to testify. The dafka machar. It's only when Ruvain sells the object to Levi and Yehuda challenges him. Dahavi le yeyish v'shinu rishus. Because in that situation, there is both the Shimon giving up hope of ever getting it back, and the fact that there was a change in possession. Aval lo machar, but if in fact we were dealing with Ruvain himself as the person holding the object, and there was no Levi who purchased it from Ruvain, but then Dahadra lay, Shimon could get it back. It's returnable. And as a result, Ruvain has an obligation to return it. So Shimon should not be able to testify because his testimony, he has an interest in it. Because as long as it's in Ruvain's hands, he will get his stolen object back. But if in fact it's not in his, and it's only when it's not in his hands that he could potentially testify. And so Tana Reisha Nami Machar. So since the second case, the case of the movable objects, the cow and the talus, we need to be talking about where Ruvain the thief sold it to Levi. So too, we're going to say that the first case will also talk about that case. And so now I will note.
How can he be tested? How can he testify in the case where there's Yeyush? If he's miyayesh, then he doesn't have any, and Vashinu Yeshut, then
no, that's exactly why he can testify. The point is that he's testifying that it doesn't belong to Yehuda. Now, once he's had Yeyush and Shinu Rishus, so as a result, he has no possibility of getting the object back. Meaning, if I steal something from you,
right? So how can he testify? Testify to what?
Testify that it doesn't belong to Yehuda, that it never belonged to Yehuda, that this, in fact, had been his, and now it belongs to Levi based on the concept of Yeyush and Shinu Rishus.
But Yehuda was the original owner, right?
Well, that's what Yehuda claims, but
you were saying Shimon was the original owner, but Yehuda was the original owner.
No, that one of them is lying. Again, yeah, it's very important to remember that in almost every one of the cases we're dealing with, somebody is lying or somebody's making a mistake. And so as a result, there are contradictory claims.
But Shimon claimed that Yehuda sold it to him, right? That he bought it from Yehuda.
No. Shimon's claim is that it was always his. Yehuda's claim is that it was always his.
On what basis? I thought this was a case where Shimon stated that he had bought it from Yehuda at some point.
No, we never had Shimon saying, like exactly. Shimon's like the squatter in our cases that we've been talking about in Kazaka. Thank you, James. So the point is that Shimon and Yehuda each claim original ownership. Levi claims that he bought it legitimately from Ruvain, and Ruvain doesn't say anything because he's a thief. So, or maybe he lies and says that he thought that he bought it from Shimon. But in any event, the point is that
if Shimon is like the squatter, like we said earlier, the squatter.
Exactly, that's exactly what we said.
The squatter was saying that he had chazak on it in our earlier cases. And how did he have chazak? He would claim that he bought it. That at some point there was a sale. He bought it. That was his. He's muchzak in it because it was his.
Correct, but he is not saying he bought it from Yehuda. He bought it from some third party. The whole point is that he's claiming that it was never Yehuda's. That's the implication that we have in Rashbam.
So how does Yehuda even come in the picture? Where does he come to say it was his?
Because he says that it was his. I mean, what do you mean? The point is that he says that I don't know, whoever Shimon got it from stole it from him, or maybe Shimon himself is actually a thief. The bottom line is that Yehuda says that he was the original owner and that it should be returned to him. That's what he's claiming,
right?
And so And so in any event, we're about to cancel this out. So, the bottom line is that we're going to reject Rav Sheshis's interpretation because it's extraordinarily complicated, and we're going to come up with a much simpler explanation of our brisa. But let's finish this
If he
up.
has yayus, then why bother testifying at all?
Well, the point is that he's allowed to testify. Meaning, you're right. Exactly. The whole point of being allowed to testify is because you have no interest in the matter any longer. So that's exactly right. I mean, that's the why is always because you're trying to do the right thing. So, because if you're trying to do, if you have some incentive to do the testimony that you're having, then you probably have some kind of then you're
No, but we already proved on the previous stuff that even if he gets
no
it
gay
back, even if he gets it back, it doesn't go to the creditor, so he still owes the same amount of money.
That's if he made if he sold it with a lien, sold it with a guarantee. But we're assuming that he sold it without a guarantee. In this, in our understanding of the Bryce, according to Rav Sheshes, he sold it without a guarantee.
What does Shimon have to gain from this if he's not nogea b'davar and he doesn't want it back? Or what?
No, that's exactly. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be honest. But Levi bought it from a thief, and when you buy something from a thief, as long as there was yayush before the thief sold it, well, then now it belongs to the purchaser. Because again, Judaism tries to facilitate commerce, and in order to facilitate commerce, we have the principle of yayush and shina rishus when it comes to metaltalin. And so that's why.
But what does Shimon gain from this?
He doesn't gain anything. He gains the telling the truth. That's the whole point. If he were to actually gain something, then he would be nogea b'davar, and he wouldn't be allowed to testify.
Every other witness and
Exactly. He gains the same thing 100%. That's an excellent point, James, again.
What's that?
He gains the same thing that any witness in any other case gains by testifying. The satisfaction of telling the truth and being and doing the right thing, but really nothing else. Okay, so the problem is now v'seifa nami nehida miyayish migufe midame miyayish. So let's take a look at Rashbam, right? So the literal translation is, one second, in the Seifa, even if Shimon abandoned, gave up hope of recovering it, did he give up hope of getting back its value? So this is a question, and we'll take a look in the Rashbam. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, about 14 lines down in the Rashbam, in the widest lines of the Rashbam, near the beginning of the line. Midameh mimiyayish, did he give up hope from receiving the money? Bidmia, this is a question. V'kimochelhu legazlan demei gazilto, did he forgive or waive his right to recover the money of what was stolen from him? V'halo nischayev lo hagazlan demeha. The thief is going to be obligated to pay him back for the cow or the talus that was stolen from him. The hilkach, and therefore nichale deteku biyad Levi. It's really good for Shimon to testify on behalf of Levi and keep the object in Levi's hands. Sheyachzor v'yitol hadamim miruvin, because that is what allows him to go back and get the money back from Reuven. She'ilu hayanot la Yehuda be'edim, because if Yehuda were to have taken away the talus and cow from Levi, and now it turns out that he's the owner, nimsa shelo hayalo Shimon chelik b'hach para v'talis. It will turn out that Shimon never owned this cow or this talus. V'lo haya gova meruvin klum, and he shouldn't be able to get anything from Reuven, because if you steal something from the non-owner of the object, you don't owe that person anything, right? Because it wasn't theirs, exactly. The hilkach no gaya be'edus who. So as a result, Shimon is no gaya be'edus.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Why should he be allowed to testify in the case of the cow and the talus? And remember, the Brisa said that in the case of a cow or a talus, he can testify. In the case of a house or a field, he can't testify. Now, Ken, did you have a question?
No, it seems that in this case, if he wants to get his money back, he is no gaya b'davar.
That's exactly right. That's what the Gemara's question is. So how could we allow him to testify even in the cow and talus case? So lo tzricha demes gazlan. So okay, so Rav Sheshes will say that really the thief had died. So again, we've now really modified Rav Sheshes's case. It's got, first of all, we're talking about a thief. Second of all, we're talking about, it was stolen. There was no, when he doesn't have any, there's no lien on, he has no lien on it. He has no other property, et cetera, et cetera. So we really narrowed this case and set up a lot of Kimtas in terms of what the case is talking about. So, and in fact, we have this basis on the following Mishnah. D'tanan hagozo u'machilas banav. If you steal something and you feed your children with it, lifnehem, or you leave it to them for an inheritance, peturim mishalem. Well, then your children are going to be exempt from paying because you didn't steal the object.
They didn't steal it.
Because they didn't steal the object. Right, exactly. Sorry. You stole the object. They didn't steal the object. Sorry, my words were a little off. Okay. So that's the story. Well, 1 second. If that's the case, well, then 1 second, why bother with a sale to Levi? Why not have Levi inherit from Reuven? So the Lukma Biyorish, why not again set up the Brisa to talk about Levi inheriting it from Reuven rather than buying it from Reuven?
Wait, Levi's his son?
Well, we're making
Levi's the son of Reuven?
We're asking the question. We're saying why not allow it, meaning instead of setting it up that Levi is not the son of Reuven and is a purchaser from Reuven, why not let it be that Reuven died? Because we're talking about a situation where Reuven died, right? That was how we just that was the latest alteration of our understanding of the Brisa. So let's say that Reuven died and that Levi was his heir as opposed to the purchaser.
And he wasn't a katan. He wasn't a katan.
No, and he's not a katan, 100%. He's a gadol. So now, again, we can say that in that situation, if it was an acquisition of real estate, so then that real estate maintains its maintains the lien for the ability of past lenders to potentially take it away, and thereby Shimon has something to gain by keeping it with Levi, Reuven's heir. But when it's and therefore he shouldn't be able to testify, and therefore he's not able to testify. On the other hand, when it's a cow or a talus, and he has no opportunity to get it back, he can't get back the money because Reuven's dead, and he can't get back the object because presumably at the moment we're going to assume that there's Yeyush and Shinoi Rishus. So as a result, he should be able to testify that it belongs to Levi as opposed to belonging to Yehuda.
Just to back up, why are we trying to narrow this Brisa so much? The rabbis are really uncomfortable with people being able to testify on behalf of movable objects, just straight out?
I think the idea is why did we, the question is why did we set this up and incorporate this concept of this guarantee having something to do with it? And we're going to end up with a much simpler case in about 2 minutes.
But in either case, doesn't he have the ability to testify? If it's Karka and it's Karka Yerusha, then the children get, and you cannot argue with that, right? They can't reclaim it from them.
No, 100% you can, because again, if there is if Shimon has a written IOU to James so that James can go and collect from that property, even if Reuven had bought it from Shimon and then died and left it to Levi, he would be allowed to claim the property.
From the Yorshim?
Yes, absolutely. Even from the Yorshim. Now, if the Yorshim are minors, so then he would have to wait until they become adults in case there's an argument that that they have paid up. Or and it may be that James will have to swear that it was never paid the debt.
But it says the children Peturim Milashalim. They don't have to pay, right?
Right, but that is where we're dealing with the cow and the talus. The cow and the talus, you're absolutely right, because there is no lien on those items. And so as a result, that's why. So now we're going to say.
But karka, one can collect even from the Yorshim.
Correct. So honey, so now we don't have this question of why not talk about an heir if we say rishus yorish lav kirishus lokeach dami. If we say that the person who inherits something is not equivalent to the is not equivalent to a purchaser, and is not, and we therefore say that it's not like shinoi rishus, well, then the inheritors, when the object is still in existence, have an obligation to return the item. But Shapir, so then we understand why the Brisa talked about a sale. Elamanda Amar Rishus Yorish Kirishus Lokeach Dami My Ikalamemer. Why would you have to talk about a sales situation? Let's talk about an inheritance where Levi is Reuven's son. And we are not going to answer this question. This question is problematic. And now, in addition to that, we're going to say another problem. V'od kasha leila Abaye. Abaye had another problem. Mibnei she'achariyosav alav. Ve'ein acharayoso alav. The issue is that the Brisa, remember the Brisa said it was because of the guarantee that the seller gave the buyer, and because there is no guarantee provided by the seller, that was what was the key element. And so we had understood on some level that it was because of an achrayus that Shimon had given to hit the people who had lent him money. But the problem is really this is all about b'mneishahu choseres lo ve'enu choseres lo mibayle. Really, it is all about is there the possibility of Shimon getting the property back? And if there is the possibility of Shimon getting the property back, well, then that's the problem, according to Rav Shesh's interpretation. Not about whether or not there was a lien on the property or whether it was sold with a mortgage. So Ella Kedarav Bar Shmuel. So we have now rejected Rav Shesh's approach, and we're now going to give a new interpretation of our Brisa. Again, remember, the Brisa just said that if you sell a house or a field, the seller can't testify on behalf of the buyer because of the guarantee that the seller gave the buyer, or because of the guarantee. And we implied in that the seller gave the buyer. And similarly, if someone sells a cow or a talus, the seller may testify on behalf of the buyer because there is no guarantee, again, provided by the seller, presumably to the buyer. But we're going to reinterpret that. So let's see what it is. So
is that a given? Is that always the case that with a metaltalin there's no achrayut, but with karka there is achrayut? Is that always a given or not?
No, it's not always a given. And that's part of the reason that we ask the question of what is this Brisa really talking about? That's exactly the right question. That's exactly the point. We don't understand this Brisa because, what are we really trying to say? What's the key here for our understanding? And so now we're going to say the following.
The karka has natural achrayos with it, right?
There is often achrayos, but you don't have to have achrayos, meaning there's two kinds of achrayos, meaning I can sell you karka and offer you no guarantee, so that if when Stan comes and takes it away from
explicit, there's nothing said it has achrayos.
I think you're right that we've said that. I think you're right that we've said that. But we haven't. We're going to now clarify exactly what the case is. So to Amar Rav and Bar Shmuel Mishmei de Shmuel Hamocher Sada lechaveru shelo ba'achrayus. If you sell a field that without any guarantee, ein meid aleha. Even when you sell it without a guarantee, you can't testify about it. Okay, because it remains collectible by the Baal Chov. So as a result, don't get me involved with the thief and the sale. It's not about my trying to get it back. It is about if I'm Shimon in this situation, my situation is that when we were talking about Rav Shesh's approach, it was all about me getting back the property. And when I could get back the property, I can't testify. And when I can't get back the property, I can testify. Okay. But now, given all the problems that we have with that approach, we're going to say, no, ignore the thief. The point is that Shimon is selling the property to Reuven. And now Yehuda comes and is trying to take it away from Reuven. And the issue is that Shimon sold it to Reuven with no guarantees. And so the issue is that when Shimon is trying to keep it in Reuven's hands, that will allow Levi, who Shimon owes money to now come and collect the property. And so as a result, he has an interest. He's Nogea B'davar because he wants to keep it with Reuven, the purchaser, because if he keeps it with Reuven, the purchaser, it can be collected for debts that he owes. Okay. And so that's the explanation. Correct.
Oh, so that he doesn't have achrayut. So he has no achrayut,
and he has no achrayus. 1 second, Ken. Let me answer James' question first because he asked it first. He has no achrayus to Reuven because he sold it without a guarantee.
I mean,
Reuven can't complain.
He always has the right to collect, but Reuven can't.
Correct. Levi has the right to collect because I borrowed the money from him on a written contract. And so as a result, that written contract creates a mortgage on my existing properties. I then sold the property to Reuven. So now Levi, who has a pre-existing debt, has the written debt. He has the ability to collect.
Could have said because of the liens, not because of the achrayas.
Well, the achrayas is the reverse side of the lien. The achrayas is what I have given as part of the lien. The lien is achrayas.
It's the achrayas to the Baal Chov.
To the Baal Chov. Exactly. It's the achrayas to the Baal Chov, not to the purchaser. Ken, go ahead.
So Shimon is sort of happy with the matter because he doesn't have the money to pay the Levi. He has no achrayut on the property. So Levi can come and take it from
that's exactly right. And that's why we're not going to let him testify.
Now, so what should happen though if the value of the property is greater than the chov that Shimon owes to Levi?
So that was something that we've talked about during the course, I think, of Bava Metzia, rather, during the course of Bava Metzia, where we noted various opinions of whether or not Reuven has the ability to say, listen, you need to let me take, you can only take the value of the portion of the property. You can only take we have to subdivide the property.
Right,
and then there was the other opinion that says, no, you have to just pay me the difference. And you don't, and Reuven does not have a right to any real estate. So that was a machlokas that we saw. I think that we ended up saying that Reuven can force the sale of a portion of the property, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But in the end, but you're absolutely right that, of course, that does not let Levi collect more than he is actually due. Reuven will be able to keep any overage of the value of the property over the value of the loan. Okay, so let's take a look at the Rashbam on this. So it's the Rashbam 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's about 15 lines, 16 lines up towards the end of the line. Amar. So Bagozo Basra in Baba Kama Daf Kuf Yud Aleph. Allah Dahach Mishnah. On this Mishnah, Rishus Yoresh the Gazlan Lav Kirish. 1 second. No, I'm sorry. That's that was earlier that we had. We didn't go over that one. So let's go over 1, 2, 3, 7 lines up, end of the line. Elakid Ravin Bar Shmuel. So as Ravin Shmuel. So Asala Ashmeinan Reisha Dahach Brisa. So we're going to set up the beginning of this Brisa below Begazal Umachar. We're not talking about where it was stolen and sold, Myri. And even though the halacha is, as we said earlier, miu brisa la bahachi iri. So even though the halacha is, in fact, everything that Rav Sheshes said is an accurate description of the halacha, but it's not an accurate description of this brisa. Ela b'mocher karka shalo. We're talking about a situation where you sell your own property. Shahaisa mishubedes lebalchov, that it was already liened and mortgaged to a creditor. Umakra lokeach zeh, and now Ruvain sells it to, Shimon sells it to Ruvain, the buyer. Va'asa inish ma'alma, and Yehuda comes and complains, the kama'arer, and argues that it's his. Delo yeid lo hamoker lelokeach, that Shimon doesn't have the ability to testify on behalf of Ruvain. Because the achrayus that of Levi's mortgage on the property remains on the property, and so as a result, Shimon wants to keep that. So that therefore he's no ge'abadavar. Democher legabos mekarkazeh. Right, that this balchov of the seller, the Levi who was owed money by Shimon, he wants to be able to still collect from this property. Therefore, Shimon really wants to keep it in the hand of Reuven. Dahadar Allah balchov, because now Levi has the ability to come and take it. The lowly havi mocher lova Russia, and that way, if Shimon can't pay Levi back, he won't be a bad person, because a person who can't pay a loan is considered a Russia. Velo Yisholim, and he won't be able to, because he won't be able to pay. Ukeneged lokeach, and when it comes to Ruvain, who purchased it from him, even though now this property is going to be taken away from Ruvain, lo lihavile Russia. Shimon isn't a Russia vis-a-vis Ruvain, because Shahare lo ba'achrayis makarlo. He was clear he did not sell it with any responsibility, without any guarantee. V'hilkach ein meid, and therefore he cannot testify. Denogea be'edusu, because he has a benefit from testifying. Aval b'seifa machar lo para v'talis lo kayach. But in the latter case of our brisa, where you sell the cow or the talis, v'asa inish me'alma v'kama arer, and Yehuda comes and complains and says that it really belongs to him, me'id lo mocher l'lokeach. In that situation, Shimon can testify for Reuven, who purchased his cow or his talis. L'lokeach ala. The kigon shemachra lo shelo b'achrayas. Again, he sold the property without any guarantee. And so as a result, there is no possibility for a Baal Chov to collect from this metaltalin, because we say that generally metaltalin doesn't have any guarantee that goes along with it. So when I sell my computer, my laptop to Stan, there's no longer an ability for James, whom I owe money to say that, oh, well, this was a property that David owned before when I made him the loan, I should be able to collect from it. We don't allow that, because we don't say that exists with respect to movable property. Delova hamocher, because the lender of the seller, namely Levi, legabos metaltalin, we don't let him take metaltalin. Sheshibad, that because of some kind of lien. Umachar la'acherim, and now it's sold to somebody else. Afilu asan apotiki. We're going to see that even if I say to James that you, James, are specifically allowed to just go ahead and take my laptop away because this is where you're going to collect from for the on the loan, lebal chov. If I tell that to the person whom I owe money, and then I go ahead and sell my laptop to somebody else, Rava, we're going to see that Rava says v'ishtakach delo nogea be'edusu. I'm still not. He's not allowed to collect it, and we're going to see that I'm not going to, and therefore I should be able to testify. So the davka bias osada, but all of this is only with respect to back into the Gemara now, right? So we're on the last word of the second to last line. Vidavka bias osada. It's specifically with a house or a field. Aval para talis lomi boy. Continuing to the next page on Mem Dalan and Bet, bistama. It doesn't make, it certainly is true that if I simply sell a cow or a talus without actually saying anything about it, delo mishtabda lay, that there is no mortgage associated with it. It's not as if James is going to be able to collect when I sell it to Stan. My timer, it's because it's movable property. Lo mishtabde. And my metaltalin is not leaned to James based on my borrowing money from James. And now, even if I were to write in a contract, miglima de al kasve, that James even can take the shirt off my back, but hani mili to isnahu ba'anayu. That is only when it is still in existence in my back, on my back. But if it's not here, well, then lo, he doesn't have the ability. And that's when I sell it stam. But afilu, meaning, and I sell it with stam, meaning I didn't even give any special rights to James. Ella afilu asau apotiki. Even if I tell James, and Rashbam here, second line, last word on the line, apotiki, po tehe kai. Here is where you can come. So this is what you can take. What? The second skinny line. Thank you. Second skinny line in Rashbam, that this is an abbreviation, a contraction of those three words. That's what apotiki stands for. And the idea is that when this allows James quick access to his money if I don't pay him on time. Namilo. Even if I were to say that, and then I sell the item of an apotiki to Stan, James does not have the ability to collect it. And so as a result, in our situation, where Shimon sells it to Ruvain, and now Yehuda is trying to claim from Ruvain these properties, Shimon has the ability to testify.
In the case of the karka, without achriyut, then he can't.
I can't testify because even though I sold it without a guarantee, even though Shimon sold it without a guarantee, that property still remains available for Shimon's creditors to collect from. And so as a result, he still has an interest even when he sells it without the guarantee, because there's a natural lien on property from any kind of debt that's written. So
without achrayut, then the buyer has an obligation himself to check if there's a lien before he buys it.
That's right, 100%. So, but the point is that now when Yehuda is trying to take it away from Ruvain, Shimon can't testify because he's interested in the matter. So again, but when it comes to, let's go back into the Gemara, right? So we're back afilu apotiki, right? So it's 1, 2 apotiki, right? We're 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 lines down. First word on the line in the Gemara. So namilo, even if I were to have made an apotiki with respect to this cow and this talus, saying to my creditor Stan that my creditor James, that he is going to be able to collect from it. If I now sell it to Stan, James still has no ability to collect it.
Namilo. A formal lien, or you're just saying this is the property I'm going to pay you?
It's very similar to a lien. It's very similar to a lien, and what we're highlighting now is it's not fully a lien. Okay, that's exactly what we're trying to highlight. Okay, so my timer, why not? Why doesn't he have it? Kida Rava, as Rava said, to Amar Rava, Asa Abdo Apotiki. If you make a slave an apotiki, well then umacharo, and you sell the slave, balchov gova mimenu. Then the lien does transfer with it. So it's not apotiki is like an in-between status. It's stronger. It's not as strong as a lien. But it is stronger than just saying you can take the shirt off my back.
Ever considered karka?
We'll see that in the reason in a moment.
We had a discussion earlier. I don't remember Bava Metzia.
Yes,
that a slave is a slave like karka, or is he not like karka?
That's exactly right. James was saying exactly that point. So 100%. But we're going to see that there's another reason. But you're absolutely right that definitely part of this is based on the analogous situation, and you are 100% right to recognize this from Baba Kama. If you take a look at the Masoras Hashas, the little aleph of the Amar Rava is highlighting that we saw this in Baba Kama, Daf Yud Aleph Amabet, Daf Lamed Gimel Amabet. We also saw it in Gittin. So the point is that this is not the first time that we've seen this language. Shoro v'chamoru apotiki. But if you make your ox or your donkey in a potiki umacharo and you sell it, ein balchov gova hemenu. The creditor does not have the right. So when I sell my cow or my ox or my donkey to stand, James does not have the right to collect from it, even if I made that animal in a potiki. My taima, what's the reason for the difference? Ha isle kala v'ha lesle kala. When it comes to selling a slave, it becomes known. People know about the sale. That's another aspect in which a real property is similar to a slave. But when it comes to this cow and an animal, it's not going to be known. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. So we've got a framework. Ravin has offered us a framework to say, really, we're just talking about a simple sale. And when we said at the very beginning, because of the guarantee is not that the seller gave to the buyer. It's that the seller gave to his creditors that he gave. That's what we're talking about. And so we've now clarified the situation. And so now we're dealing with a situation where the seller has sold property that without a guarantee, and now has a guarantee that he gave to his creditors. So he's not going to be able to collect. He's not going to be able to testify on behalf of the purchaser of real property, but he will be able to testify on behalf of the purchaser of movable property. But now the Gemara asks an interesting question. V'leichush, maybe we need to worry about the following situation. Okay. Scroll the screen. So now we're at the question at the bottom of the page. V'leichush dilma aknele mitaltale algav makarke. What if, when I sold this talus and cow, I sold them with a piece of property that had a lien on it, and I also had a lien on, and I gave a lien on the cow and the talus along with the lien that I gave on this piece of property. To Amar Rabba, because Rabba said the following: if I convey to James, who's my creditor, a lien on my cow and my talus, together with a lien on my real property, and we make a kinyan on that, well then, kani makarke, kani metaltale. James has gotten a lien on both my real property and my movable property. And so now when I sell my movable property, James can continue to have a claim on it.
Sell them to two different people.
Even if I sell them to other people, 100%.
You separate the land and the cow.
Even if I separate the land and the land and the cow. V'amarav chista v'hu kasav delo ka'asmachta udelo ketovsa shtare. And that requires that I write down, that I tell James that when I do this, I am giving it to you. It is not an asmachta. It is not like some kind of bet. An asmachta is often a contract where I offer like some kind of penalty clause where we say that I don't really mean it. I don't actually have intention to do it. But here I have a total intention to enable this to happen. And I'm not just trying to write something for practice. This is real meaning. This has real meaning. So in that situation, how can we know that maybe, in fact, there was a lien on the cow and the talus, given that this was possible? So the couple of answers. So Hakabamayaskin, here's what we're talking about. Kagon shalakach umakar la'alter. We know that that Shimon, in our case, he bought the cow or the talus and he sold the cow or the talus basically on the same day. And so as a result, there was no time. We saw the whole process. We saw him buy it from, let's say David. And as a result, we know that he never had a chance to create a mortgage on it. V'leichosh, 1 second, maybe we need to be worried, Dilma iknehu, that he did it about the future. So when again, we'll go back to me and James here, that when I made my lien on my real property, I told James that not only is this real property going to be a lien for the loan that I'm borrowing from you, but any movable property that I buy today is also going to be liened to James. And so as a result, through this property, it will be liened to James through the property. So as a result, he should get the lien. So shamat mina, maybe we should be able to learn from this. The akne kana umakar kana v'horish lo mishtabid. Maybe we should say that if I do that to James and now I sell that piece of property, or my heirs take that piece of property, it does not, in fact, give James a lien on that movable property. Maybe we could say, based on the concept maybe of of something that doesn't exist in the real world at the moment. But the bottom line is maybe we could avoid this whole, maybe we can learn something extra out of this. So no, not necessarily. We can give another answer. Lo, sricha de ka'amre edim. We can say that we have a case where witnesses can testify. Yadinan be bahai delo havale ara ba'ameolam. We know that this guy never had land ever. And so as a result, so I realize that we're not at the last question. We're over here. We're at answer number 2. Up above the last set of questions. So now we ask the final question.
Well, he doesn't have the land, but he's giving.
So the answer is that in the case in our brisa where I'm selling the para and the talus, it's a case where I have no land. And as a result, because I have no land, there is no possibility of me putting a definitive lien on these pieces of on the cow and the talus. Because the only way I can put a lien on the cow and the talus in a manner that will transfer when I try to sell the cow and the talus is through connecting that lien to a piece of property. Mm-hmm. All right. And so when I sell the because we know I don't have property, we therefore don't have to worry that maybe there's actually a real lien on the cow and the talus. Right. And therefore I can testify on behalf of Stan, the purchaser of my cow and talus.
Oh, but wasn't that the question, that maybe they were connected?
No, the question was, why maybe we need to be worried that when I sold Stan my cow and talus, I had previously made that cow and talus part of the lien to James by connecting it to property.
Right, that they were connected.
And so the answer is that in the end, we're going to say, I can't connect it to property because we're talking about a situation where everybody knows that I don't have any real property.
But what would be the case if they were connected?
Well, if they were connected, then I wouldn't be able to testify about it.
Okay.
Right? That would be the connection. If in fact James has the possibility of keeping of collecting from the talus and the cow if they're in Stan's possession, and Yehuda is trying to take it away, then I'm very much interested in that litigation, because now I will, it's the same as the karka. Exactly. I would be very worried. And so as a result, I would have incentive to testify in a particular way, and therefore I'm not allowed to testify.
But the question is not if he has real estate now, because he had real estate when he made the loan.
True. I mean, it's essentially that it says Delo Habale Aram Ola. It says that he never owned property. Never had property. Exactly. And you should call for highlight.
Even if he had property now and he didn't have it when he made the loan, he would still be.
Yeah, even if he didn't have it when he made the loan, because I can always go to you and make a kinyan with you to add to the loan, to add to the lien. Exactly. All right.
If they are connected, then Shimon can't testify because he's no.
That's exactly right.
But however, if they are connected, can Levi, who's the owner of the chov, is he then allowed? Sure, he can certainly connect. He can collect on the karka, but can he collect on the metalton as well?
Yeah, if in fact that they were connected and I created and Shimon created a lien on them, yes, absolutely. That's the whole point. Correct. All right. V'ha'amar Rav Papa, let's finish up. Aval gavta amar Rabbanan hamocher sadel lechaveru shelo ba'achrayus uva balchov utarfa eno chozer alav. So now the rabbi said that when it came to a field and somebody sold it without a guarantee, so I sell a field to Stan without a guarantee, and now James comes as my balchov, and he collects that field from Stan, so we know Eino Choser Alav. Stan does not have the ability to come back to me and complain. He knows he bought it without a guarantee. Nimsa She'ena Shalo. But if it turns out, Nimsa She'ena Shalo, if it turns out that I never own this field, Choser Alav, according to Rav Papa, Stan does have a right. So even though I sold it to Stan without a guarantee, there is an implicit guarantee of ownership. That's what Rav Papa says, but that's not the universal opinion. But the point is that if we say that, not just about real estate, but also about the cow and the talus, then how can I testify on Stan's behalf? Because if in fact,
any commerce.
Well, if in fact Levi comes and takes it away, and it turns out that I never owned it, Stan will be able to come back to me and get his repayment. So I'm always going to be interested. So even in the metaltalin case, I shouldn't be able to testify.
He's simplifying the case even more, taking out the balchov.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. On some level, the balchov doesn't matter, but remember, this is a question, because this is a question on the entire brisa. Yeah. Even again, according to Ravin's interpretation, how can we ever have any kind of situation like this? So,
what does it mean? Eino choser alav. What does that mean here? Eino choser to whom?
Oh, to a seller. Can you go back to the seller and get your money back? So the answer is if the property gets taken away by a balchov, by another creditor, you don't. That's the reason you are sold the property without a guarantee, because the guarantee, the lack of the guarantee is that some other creditor has the right to take this away, and I don't owe you anything. That's the whole point. But if
it says choser alav, if it's not,
but if in fact it turns out that I never owned it, she'eno shalo, then choser alav. Then you do have the right to come back to me as my purchaser and say, "Hey, you sold me property you never owned." So So according to Rav Papa, the brisa here must be dealing with b'makir ba shehi bas chamoro. We're dealing with a situation where you recognize the item, and the seller. So again, Stan is my buyer, and Stan says, I know for a fact that this cow that I'm buying from David belonged to David. because I know its ancestry, and I know that David owned the mother of this cow, and I know that David was the weaver of the talus, as Rashi explains, as Rashbam explains, excuse me. And so as a result, that's why now, as a result of that understanding, well, then now everything can work. Because in that situation, yes, ordinarily, if it turns out that somebody takes away the property from Stan because on the claim that I never owned it, Stan would have a right to come back to me. But if Stan admits that from his perspective, it was always mine, right, and somebody comes in with lying witnesses and somehow takes it away from Stan, the fact that I sold it with a no guarantee means that Stan in that situation does not have the right to come back to me, because Stan admits that it was mine. He doesn't have the ability to claim that it was never mine. So that's how Rav Papa deals with it. However,
he doesn't know that you stole it or that you, he doesn't know that. It was in your possession. Stan says, yeah, I've seen it with you for a year and a half.
No, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be more than that. It's more than that. It's Stan agrees with me that the person who's claiming it away and the person who apparently is going to be successful at taking it away from Stan is coming in with lying witnesses. There's just nothing that Stan can do about it. Stan's just up a creek because we
thought it belonged to you based on what his knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, but it's more than that. He has to really have thought that it belonged to me, because
be mistaken, and it's still gonna be taken.
That's true, but the point is that it requires a very. We're not just talking about he thought it was mine, because of course he thought it was mine. That's why he bought it from me
based on knowledge.
But he had direct knowledge, and he admits to that knowledge. Meaning he's not a liar. He even though he was, Yehuda came and took it away and was based on false testimony. Stan's not the kind of guy who's going to say, oh, well, that false testimony means that I was totally wrong, etc. He's going to admit, yes, I know that Yehuda took it away with false witnesses, and that's why in this case I'm not allowed to go back to you, and so therefore I would be able to testify on Stan's behalf. But Razvid makes it much simpler, because he disagrees with Rav Papa. Razvid says, Afilu nimtza she'ena shelo, even when it turns out that the field never belonged to me at all, if I sell it to Stan without a guarantee, Stan does not have the ability, Stan does not have the ability to come back to me. Because the seller can say to the guy, that's why I sold it to you with no guarantees. I was not guaranteeing even my ownership. And indeed, it seems, if we take a look at the chet that's in the Gemara, that seems to be how we paskin, that in fact, if you buy something with zero guarantees, it doesn't even have a guarantee that the person originally owned it. Now, we're not quite done, because we still have to further refine the case of this brisa, because the Gemara is going to tomorrow try to understand what are the precise circumstances of the case described by Rav and Bar Shmuel. So, but for that, you'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So really very complicated brisa. We tried one approach yesterday, and yes, and we're making it more complicated as possibly than necessary, and we're continuing with the second approach, God willing, tomorrow.
God willing, that's right.
All right. Be well, everybody. Have a great day.
You said the buyer of property needs to know about the property as opposed to the buyer of metalton.
Yes, a buyer of real property is expected to investigate the property.
You said sometimes loans are made and they're not publicized.
That's correct. And if that's the case, well, then that kind of loan will generally not have a claim on real property. That kind of loan will not.
Claim real property has to be announced.
It has to be a written,
and then filed with the court.
Well, today you file it with the filing system, and you record what's known as recording your mortgage on the piece of property. So it becomes a very direct process to find out where, whether or not there's a loan on any piece of property.
What are they talking?
But in those days, there was no formal recording process. The point is that if in fact you had a written document, there were relatively few written documents at that time. So it was a big deal to get witnesses to sign on the document, etc. So people knew that a written document, that I had taken out a loan from you with a
fair and two witnesses.
exactly.
It
It becomes public knowledge. Exactly. And that's based on the concept that in general, when we say that something is known by three people, it's known by the entire world. And there's even an argument, there's a basis to say that basically Lashon Hara won't continue to exist once. In fact, we saw that earlier in Bava Metzia, won't continue to exist once you have something that's known by three people. So that concept makes a lot of sense. But again, the idea is that the goal was that when something is known and knowable, we're going to assume that a buyer of real estate is going to need to investigate the seller and thereby be able to figure out what the story is.
And now we also need to investigate the ownership.
Yeah. Oh, and the ownership chain, because the truth is right. If I borrow money from you, and now I sell a piece of property to Ken, and Ken sells that piece of property to Moshe, you still have the ability to go to Moshe. So when Moshe investigates the property, it's not enough.
No, but even without the Baal Chov, what we said at the end by Rav Papa was saying, you don't even need the Baal Chov, just the when you buy a piece of land, you better make sure that person really owned it.
Well, Rav Zvid would say that Rav Zvid would say you have to. Rav Papa would say that, oh, well, if it turns out that I never owned it, so then, Moshe could go back to Ken, could go back to me to try and get the money back. But if I sell it to them with no guarantee, according to Rav Zvid, they're out up a creek without a paddle.
Right.
That's exactly right. So when you buy real estate, you need to know, is there a guarantee? Is there no guarantee? And that's why, today, right, there is insurance that you buy in order to insure the
title insurance.
Title insurance, exactly. Thank you. Title insurance that you buy in order to ensure the fact that the people who owned it before them actually owned it, so that way you'd avoid this issue. But that's exactly right. That's what that's all about, is to try and simplify. There wasn't a product called insurance back then, and so as a result, that didn't exist. And so a lot of what we're talking about now is to try and overcome the fact that there wasn't a product called title insurance.
Discount to buy property without achrayas.
Oh, 100%, absolutely, because you knew you could lose it in a day. Indeed, the Gemara refers to this as often as sort of like just buying it for the crops that are currently in the field. Right. That's really what you would be doing. You'd be buying, what is it?
Get to them in time.
Correct. You have to get to them in time. That's exactly right. All right, you should cook, everybody. Well, looking forward to picking up tomorrow.
What's going on? Ken's apartment. Ken, how's your apartment?
Well, how is it? There's still, it's still drying up. Some things are still drying.